Hello, friends. Very good morning. This is a Sunday live session on YouTube from Kitabe Club. We have a very special guest today with us, uh, Amish Tandon. Let me introduce to you Amish Tandon. We have a very special book of his today. Amish is a corporate lawyer practicing in Delhi for more than a decade with special focus on insolvency, arbitration, and general corporate advisory. He has co-founded a law firm, Innovatus Law, which specializes in dispute resolution and general corporate practice. As an author, Amish, this is Amish's second book, which is we are going to discuss today, which says Indian Citizenship and Immigration Laws. He has also authored a best-selling book titled Law of Sexual Harassment at Workplace, Practice and the Procedures. Let me also tell you about him. He represents regularly at Supreme Court at Delhi, of India at Delhi. He represents at National Corporate Law Tribunal and also National Company Law Appellate Tribunal and Arbitral Tribunals. So, on behalf of Kitabe Club and our entire team, I welcome you, Amish, for this live session.
Thank you, Garima, for having me here today.
So let's start the idea about firstly with being we always take this question because we do have a curiosity like being so busy in all your corporate commitments, professional commitments, how the idea of being author stuck with you and the all the subjects you have taken for your book are very deep, but you handle them very well. So just tell us something about it.
I'll answer this in two parts, Garima. The first is what made me an author. Well, to be very candid, I wrote my first book in 2017. Of course, the work started in 2015 itself. That is the time when I had just started practice. So, as you're aware, in the legal practice, initially you have more time at hand and uh, work is relatively less. So that the idea was to channelize your energies towards something productive. And of course, I've been reading and I've been writing articles, etc., since my college days. So that's how the idea of writing a book came to me, and that's when I started writing. Once you write the first one, then it becomes more of a habit. So it's more about finishing one, starting the other, because it's more of a it's like a routine. It comes in your routine. When you have less time, you work on weekends on the book. When you have more time on holidays, etc., then you can. So ultimately, writing a book always helps. I remember a very senior lawyer once pointing out that every lawyer should at least write 3 to 4 books uh, in areas in which he wishes to specialize or have expertise on, because that gives him a strategic advantage even in terms of the profession. But I have differed there a little bit. I have not written, as you would have noted, my subjects are not the subjects that I've chosen are
Yes.
little different from my actual area of practice. Well, I have a different theory. Of course, eventually I may, of course, write in areas of my actual practice also. But at the moment, I started with writing in areas which are basically gray, where there is little or very little literature available in the market. The idea was to write on subjects where you expand your horizons, A, and B, you also add value to the society because you're writing on areas where there is little written. So the
So
first
true.
one also came. The first one, of course, was again in 2006, 15, 16. You would recall there was very little literature on the subject. Now, of course, there are some books, but that time, so that was again one of the few at that time. This one, of course, is a creation of or this started thanks to the CAA, to the lockdown, when I started
Mhm.
examining this area. And again, I realized very soon that there is nothing, very little, not, I won't say nothing, but very little literature on the subject. And I thought that I could
Clarity is very
contribute.
less basically.
Clarity is less. There are very few commentaries on the subject, if you see. So the idea was to write a holistic commentary or a holistic book which covers all facets of the Indian citizenship and immigration law. So I don't. So again, and the idea again is to write. Now that this book is out, we can safely say that there is at least one book that covers all these facets in one place.
Surely,
So
surely. I mean,
that's the reason behind selecting such areas.
Yeah, basically there are gray areas, but yet they need to be addressed very well. As from the society's perspective of like a general person should also know able to handle the laws very well, at least for their knowledge and their purpose.
That's
Coming
correct.
starting with basically about the book. Before we go move further, can you just brief our viewers a little bit about the citizenship of a country? Let's talk in Indian context, if it is okay with you, and
Yes.
how what is actually a citizenship and how it can be obtained.
See, under Indian, I'll be, of course, I'm competent to only speak about Indian law. So I'll just give you a quick background as to how one can obtain Indian citizenship. I'll break it down into four or five heads and I'll make it very brief. The first way and the most common way is how you and me have become citizens of this country, that is citizenship by birth. Most common method, it is this kind of citizenship, purely automatic. You don't have to obtain any registration, you don't have to from any authority. The fact that you are born in a certain country grants you citizenship of that country. Initially it was very liberal, the original position, because after independence, I don't think, although there was a lot of migration, but I think it came, the problem was really identified much later on, so they've tightened the screws over the years. So the original position was either parent, if you're born in India, even if your parents are not Indians, they're foreigners, you will still get Indian citizenship. After that, they cut it, they sort of tightened it somewhere, and they said that, okay, now we will, and that happened in 1987. That's when they said that, okay, we will have to ensure that even if the child is born in India, at least one parent must be an Indian citizen, if not both. Further tightened in 2003, where they said, okay, one must be an Indian citizen and the other must not be an illegal migrant. I think that is the
Okay.
first step. In fact, that's what I've covered in the book also, that perhaps 2003 was the first uh, event, or 2003's amendment was the first time that citizen, that steps started, or the government started taking steps to ensure that illegal migrancy is somewhere curbed, and for posterity and for future purposes, because this is the first time where they say that if one of the parent is an illegal migrant, so mere birth will not give citizenship to the child. So of course this is the most
Okay.
common method. The second one is citizenship by descent. So this is somebody not born in India, but somebody who has roots in India. For I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody who's working abroad, an Indian person working abroad, and or an Indian couple working abroad, although Indian citizens giving birth to their child abroad. Of
Hmm.
course, they would want their children to be Indians by descent. So this is where this comes into play. So it's called citizenship by descent. This generally involves a process of registration with the Indian consulate in that country.
Hmm.
Third is a plain and simple. These are the automatic, or the ones which are connected with birth. Then comes what you would have heard called citizenship by registration and citizenship by naturalization.
Right.
So, so these are the ways where people acquire Indian citizens. So original non-Indian citizens going ahead to acquire citizenship. So this is where marriage to an Indian citizen is one of the areas, or one of the eligibility criteria through which you can acquire Indian citizen. Another one is that you are a person of Indian origin and you have resided in India for a certain number of years, which gives you the authority to thereafter make an application to the government. There is a process, and if you fulfill all criteria and if you fulfill the test, you will be granted Indian citizenship. Naturalization is also on similar lines. You have to be in India for a certain number of years, 12 years or so, and after that make an application which will be scrutinized by the government, and if all is well, you will be granted citizenship. There is yet one more method called the in citizenship by incorporation of territory. Now, what does that mean? An outside country, once an outside territory becomes a part of India, the government absorbs all such persons. Some
Okay.
examples, of course, are Sikkim. For example, was
Mhm.
originally a monarchy. In 1975, once it became a part of India, the citizens ultimately, all subjects of citizens of Sikkim were to be were given Indian citizenship.
Indian citizen.
Same is the position with Goa, that was originally a Portuguese
Hmm.
colony in 1962. Goa, Daman, and Diu, all three. Then, of course, there are other cases also. Pondicherry is also one more example. So these are not originally Indian territories becoming Indian after formation of India, becoming part of Indian territory, and subsequently their subjects getting Indian citizenship. So these are the 4 or 5 ways through which, very broadly, one can get citizenship of India.
Okay, that was very brief and quick. Even a layman can have a basic idea how our citizenship
That's the
can be
idea.
obtained.
Yes.
Coming to that, how as a citizen, what are the privileges or rights we enjoy?
See, as a citizen, you enjoy every right which is available to you in the country. And of course, it is, in fact, I would say, a citizen, that's the idea, that if you're a citizen, you are entitled to every right that is available, as we see in the Constitution. There is one more, in fact, when you speak of this, there is one, and I'm speaking specifically about citizenship. I would like to make one addition here, and I would like to introduce one concept here called the Overseas Citizen of India, called the OCI.
Hmm. Right.
So that, in fact, this aspect is very relevant when it comes to rights of citizens. Who is an OCI? Now, I'll just quickly explain in 2 lines what an OCI is, and then I'll, of course, contrast Indian citizens and OCIs. An Indian citizen, of course, we've already discussed, is a person who is born in India or who wants to be a full-fledged citizen of India. An OCI is a person of Indian origin. His roots may be from here, his family's forefathers, ancestors may be from here. But he is not an Indian citizen. He is actually a citizen of another country.
Okay.
So it could be that he was originally here, then he went and left, or he was born outside and settled abroad, etc. But he has connections and ties in India. Now, where does the OCI concept come in? India doesn't allow dual citizenship, as you are aware. So we don't have a concept of
Yes.
multi-citizenship or dual
Hmm.
citizenship, which in other words means that there are lots of countries that allow a citizen to hold different passports, or you can hold citizenship of more than one country simultaneously. So this concept was evolved in the year 2004, where they said, very well, there are Indians who originally Indians, not Indian citizens, who have ties in India. So we will introduce a concept of overseas citizenship of India, originally called
Hmm.
PIO, person of Indian origin.
Of
Later
Indian
on, of
origin.
course, yes, and then the OCI came in, and then they merged the two together. These persons will have certain benefits, and they will not be Indian citizens, mind you. So they will
Hmm.
not have rights akin to an Indian citizen. The more critical ones being that they can't vote. They will not be able to contest any, have any, take any government position on a full-time
Hmm.
basis. They will also not be able to contest any elections, etc. But we will give them certain benefits contractually, not, of course, uh, through which uh, they can come and go as they please, and they can also enjoy other benefits, such as a lifelong visa,
Right.
multi-entry visa. So you don't have to go take visas, you can come and go as you please.
Hmm.
There are certain, you can apply, and you can secure education in various Indian institutes at par with Indian citizens. Even in
Hmm.
terms of jobs and etc., there are certain advantages that are given. So an OCI, that's the closest. So when we say OCI is not really an Indian citizen, but the closest you can get to being an Indian citizen.
Indian citizen. Okay.
So you are not an Indian citizen. So the most critical, like I pointed out, you can't vote, you can't contest elections, etc. But there are certain other rights which are available to you. You're not
Which are
at par,
at
but you
par
are,
with the Indian citizens.
which are at par with, yes, correct, but not entirely in the sense, but it is regulated. But you're better off than a foreigner. So you're not really a foreigner. You're not
Hmm.
considered. You may not be an Indian citizen, but you won't be considered a foreigner. So that's the middle path that's been adopted.
Okay. So this gives a brief idea how what is citizenship and what about the rights. Also, I was coming to the point to explain the concept of OCI and PIO, which you have already covered, persons of Indian origin and overseas citizens of India.
Yes, so I'll just two more lines I'll add now that you did raise that.
Sure.
You said that you also wanted to have another question. OCI and PIO were two different concepts originally. Originally, what we
Hmm.
had was called the PIO persons of Indian origin. Later on in 2000, that was introduced in 2004. Subsequently, the OCI concept was also introduced, the Overseas Citizenship of India. Now, there was an overlap between these two concepts, which was resulting in a
Hmm.
lot of confusion. So, ultimately, the government decided that very well, we will disband the PIO. We will merge the PIO concept inside the concept of OCI, and there will be just one concept known as OCI. So, over the
Okay.
years now, everybody who had PIO cards have merged or migrated to OCI.
Hmm.
And as of today, there is no concept of PIO that is existing in India. PIO in the sense, in the context of dual citizenship, as we discussed. There is no
Okay.
concept of persons of PIO, persons of Indian origin cards. Now there are only one set of cards called as the OCI cards. This process also involves, if I may just add in two lines, this also involves a process of registration. It is not automatic.
Hmm.
You have to apply. There is a separate or there is a set mechanism through which an application is made. It is scrutinized, and ultimately it is a grant that is given by the government. So today there is no PIO card, there is only OCI card.
Okay. 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 So, coming to our moving forward, I would like to have brief idea. There was so much chaos, so much debates going upon about Citizenship Amendment Act 2019. What is the act and what is the essence? Why at all the amendment was required, and what made people so reluctant about accepting that?
All right, so I'll answer this, Garima. In fact, as you would have noted from the book, I have dedicated a separate section of the book only to this. So there is
Yes.
one category, and this, of course, is very important. So I will, before explaining what the CAA really is, I will just
Mm-hmm.
explain. I'll try and give a quick background about it, or as to what
Mm.
the Indian legal position is. Under Indian law, if you have under Indian law, if you are an illegal migrant,
Mm.
then you can never obtain Indian citizenship.
Okay, once you
So,
are declared illegal
correct.
migrant,
If you are an
you
illegal
can never.
migrant, yes, you cannot be an Indian citizen. So
Okay.
none of the avenues such as we discuss citizenship by registration,
Mm-hmm.
naturalization, etc. None of these avenues are available to you. In other words, you can never be an Indian citizen. That's the original rule, or that's the ordinary rule. And who is an illegal migrant? Very simply, either somebody who has entered India illegally from the start itself, or somebody who
Mm.
originally or initially entered India legally but then overstayed his welcome. So in
Okay.
both cases, you become an illegal migrant. Illegal migrant equals to no Indian citizenship. That's
Okay.
what. Now, what does the CAA, or what? There is an amendment. CAA is essentially in the
Mm.
form of an amendment. The Citizenship Act is amended. So what does the CAA
Mm.
do? Is that it says, okay, but we are here are some faiths coming
Mm.
from some regions. I will elaborate on
Mm.
them. Coming to India legally or illegally on
Mm.
by a certain date, that is December of 2014,
14.
who are either facing or may or are expected to face religious persecution.
Mm.
We will give these persons an opportunity to become an Indian citizen.
Okay.
And
So
so we will fast track. Right.
this has been category has been defined and a cutoff date has been defined in that.
Correct. That's right.
Okay.
So selected faiths, select regions, select cutoff date, and
Mm.
religious persecution. So these
Okay.
are the four benchmarks, or these are the four aspects. And then they say that, okay, if you fall qualify under all these four heads, we will give
Mm.
you we will give you an opportunity to fast track your citizenship in India.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, what is the cutoff date I just discussed is December 2014. Select faiths, we know the select faiths. So there are Hindus, there are Sikhs, there are Christians, there are Parsis,
Mm.
and there are specific regions, that is Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, only three countries.
Okay.
So, so persons of these faiths coming to India from these three countries
Hmm.
by December, or basically, or already entered India by December end 2014, 31st December 2014, will get an opportunity to become an Indian citizen. Now,
Okay.
where is the criticism? The criticism is they say very well, but this way even illegal migrants will become so many of, because
Hmm.
people who are beneficiaries of this may have entered India illegally also.
Right.
So you have actually provided an exception to the original rule that you cannot be an Indian citizen if you're an illegal migrant.
Illegal migrant.
So this is what the CAA really is.
Okay.
So there is a little background to it also. CAA came in 2019, the amendment finally, but the
Hmm.
process has been ongoing since the year 2015-16 itself.
Okay.
In fact, in the years 2015 and 16, there were certain notifications that had come, which of course
Hmm.
described the same set of people I just described. We call them the beneficiaries of CAA for the ease of
Hmm.
convenience. That these beneficiaries of CAA will not be prosecuted under Indian passport laws and Indian foreigner laws. So, in other words,
Okay.
they were granted immunity from being prosecuted under Indian law way back in 2015-16 itself.
Hmm.
So they have been in
Okay.
India. So they have been under the protection of the government since the year
Right from
2015-16
2015.
itself. 15-16
Hmm.
itself. So that has been continuing. In fact, when the CAA is of course is under challenge before the Supreme Court, even these notifications have subsequently been challenged. So all of this will be, I assume, will be decided together. But ultimately, they have been under protection. In fact, in 2017-18, there were certain RBI circulars also which came, which permitted them to even purchase property, residential
Okay.
property, not so
Residential
they
properties.
so the exercise of trying to protect and rehabilitate them had started way back in 15-16 itself. So the last straw, or
Hmm.
the only thing that remained, was to grant them full citizenship, so it ends the
Full
matter.
citizenship.
So this is what the CAA really seeks to do, which is why it has come, and which is why it is being criticized. So this is, I think, in a very uh, um, in a very brief way, this is what the CAA
We
really
can
is.
for the detailed thing, of course, we have to go to the entire
Correct,
book, and
correct.
the timeline is not
That's right.
sufficient to discuss the entire book.
That's
So
right. That's right. But I
let's.
can, of course, the idea is to
Hmm.
break it down. That's absolutely right. And
Yes.
in fact, which is why when we say what is the criticism, these are the sets of criticisms. Why have you selected these regions? Why have you selected these faiths? How will you ascertain what is religious persecution?
Hmm.
Because you see, there is persecution in Sri Lanka also. Hindus in Sri Lanka are persecuted.
Okay.
Myanmar Rohingyas, that's another example. In Tibet
All the
also we
countries
see.
in and around Indian
These are all
regions
neighbors.
are
They are also neighbors.
neighbor.
But so you have decided to keep them outside, and you've not decided to give them the benefit of CAA. Similarly, region
Hmm.
faith is another issue. That why have you kept out certain faiths? Why have you excluded certain faiths? The cutoff date is also being criticized. That why should it be 31st December 2014 itself? So there are various areas of criticism we can, of course. In fact, in my book, where I've dedicated one chapter only to the CAA debate. So in that chapter, I try to explain briefly what the criticism really is versus what is
Hmm.
the justification that the government is seeking to give. Again, the matter
Okay.
is sub judice before the Supreme Court. We'll ultimately, if it passes muster, very well. Otherwise, now we'll see how the Supreme Court deals with this issue as
How
and
this
when it
works.
how this works. But
Okay.
yes, there is deep criticism. The Assam story is slightly different, but of course, with that we can discuss separately. Assam has a special place in this. But this is broadly the outline, and this is the criticism and the CAA really, as I just explained in the last five
Okay.
minutes.
Okay. So I went through the book a little and tried to get whatever I can ask, but of course it is a deep topic. But just one question was with me. Can we have a little bit light upon how this is in entire concept in Assam, how this has affected, and there is much opposition from that side rather than other country. Why it is different from for particularly Assam?
Assam, okay. So Assam has a very special history when it comes to illegal migration, as we all are aware.
Hmm.
So because it shares a large part of its borders with Bangladesh, and it
Right.
has experienced illegal migration from Bangladesh since
Hmm.
1947. So it's not a new,
Okay.
it's not a recent event. It's been happening since 1947, immediately after the partition. So that time it was not
Hmm.
Bangladesh, it was East Pakistan,
Hmm.
when Bengal was broken into two parts.
Hmm.
East. So what has happened? So the problem has been there in Assam for a very long time.
Hmm.
In the 19, and there was, of course, when there is, it further intensified after 1971, the Bangladesh war, when liberation
Hmm.
of East Pakistan and creation of Bangladesh. The problem of migration has been very rampant.
Hmm.
Assam, and obviously the indigenous population is the worst affected when you have illegal migration of the scale that we are talking about.
Hmm.
So resulting in clashes, riots, etc. So it was a problem. In the 80s, in the year 1985, we have what we know as the Assam Accord.
Hmm.
So what was the Assam Accord? Very simply, I'll just explain in two lines what the Assam Accord was. The government said, okay, we must nip this in the bud, we must quell this issue. So what we will do is this: people who have already come until a certain date. So they said that people who have already come to uh, Bangladesh by the year 1966, whether legally or illegally, we will give them full citizenship.
Okay.
People who have come to Bangladesh between 1966 to 71,
Hmm.
we will keep them on the rolls. They will have to seek a certain registration. We will disenfranchise them, meaning that we will take away the right to vote. They will have to stay in Assam for 10 years, just to see whether the idea is that whether they really wish to be full Indian citizens or not. And once they fulfill
Okay.
all these criterias and the eligibility, we will give
Hmm.
them back their right to vote, and they will be considered as full citizens. Most
Okay.
important part was in 19, but they said that people who've come to Assam illegally after 1971 are to be
Hmm.
detected and to be removed from Assam. That is
Okay.
what the Assam Accord was, because the
Okay.
idea was to solve the problem of illegal
Solve the
migration. So they
problem.
said ki if you've come until date A, we will consider you illegal. Legal, we are not concerned. If you have come
Hmm.
within the time periods specified, that is 1966 to 1971, we'll give you some. We'll give and take. We'll take some privileges from you. You stay in once, you stay in Assam for 10 years once you
Hmm.
fulfill it. But after that, everybody else to be thrown out. To put it in
Okay.
very to put it very plainly, that you are to be detected and you are to be removed.
Hmm.
Now, although there was the Assam Accord, amendments were made under the Citizenship Act, the problem didn't really go. There were certain
Hmm.
statutes also, be popularly known as the IMDT Act, etc., that were ultimately which came in, which the Supreme, which were challenged in the Supreme Court ultimately, which were ultimately thrown. Rejected by the Supreme Court, and they were ultimately declared to be constitutionally invalid, saying that they do more harm than good. Are you trying to detect, or are you trying to safeguard these people who are illegal
Hmm.
migrants to Assam? This issue finally came to rest in 2014 when the Supreme Court, which we also know as the Assam Supreme Court judgment, the Assam NRC,
Hmm.
where the Supreme Court said nothing doing. We are now going to start the NRC process, that is the National Register of Citizens. And in this, that's a housekeeping exercise. Of course, what is an NRC? It's a
Okay.
housekeeping exercise. It's a National Register of Citizens. So we will examine everybody's case. We will see who's an illegal migrant, who's an illegal migrant. The illegal migrants ultimately will be in the excluded list, and the ultimate effect is going to be that they will be removed or they will be deported. Several other,
Basically, it is an exercise to safeguard our citizens and
the
protect
indigenous
them
population,
from.
correct. So ultimately, you see this most the indigenous populations most uh, or the greatest criticism has been that our cultural identity, etc., has been completely destroyed.
Correct.
That has been, and of course they've taken all our jobs, they've taken our work, and
Hmm.
there are so many of them around. There are other issues, etc. So that has been one of the major areas as to, or the major problems that the indigenous population of Assam has been talking about since the independence. So ultimately, the Assam NRC, and which we know the NRC exercise is ongoing, and now there is a list of 19 lakh people who are excluded. A
Okay.
total of 19 lakh people who have been detected. Of course, there is an entire elaborate mechanism. These matters are in courts now. There is a tribunal called the Foreigners Tribunal. So that
Hmm.
tribunal is now examining their case, etc. So I'm sure the ultimately it will be so. But the end result is going to be that persons who are finally, after all adjudications, are the persons who are detected or declared as illegal migrants will ultimately be removed from the country. Now, this is where the problem starts. Now, there is a list of excluded persons who have also come.
Hmm.
Now, the biggest criticism specific to Assam is that you in the Assam Accord said that illegal migrants who have come to India after 1971, regardless of
Hmm.
faith, region, religion, anything, are to be removed, detected and removed. Now you have brought in the CAA.
Hmm.
The CAA says that persons of certain or the beneficiaries coming to anywhere in India, that includes Assam, until 31st December, will be given an
Hmm.
option to be regularized. So you are
Hmm.
actually trying to protect, and of course, when in the list of 19 lakh people, there may be several people who actually who are illegal migrants, but who actually
Hmm.
who may become the beneficiary or who may be the CAA beneficiaries.
Okay.
So you have given them a second lease of life.
Hmm.
And in other words, you have, or it cuts into the Assam Accord, or it cuts into the Assam NRC judgment. So on the one hand,
Okay.
you have a judgment that is identifying them, but then you are introducing a legislation to say, okay,
A
these set
different.
of people, these CAA beneficiaries will get a second lease of life if they qualify the four parameters. So
Okay.
that is one essential difference between Assam my versus the rest of the country, because
Rest
the
of
Assam
the
and
country.
the NRC till date has only been the only state that has carried out the NRC is the Assam, that is pursuant to the Supreme Court judgment of 2014. So this is where we are in terms of course, I'm giving you a very brief outline, but the
Yes.
idea
Yes.
was to
Yes.
just explain what the real point of dispute or points of controversy are specific to Assam.
Assam is a very different situation versus rest of the country. So most of major uh, repercussion means major disturbances in that state because of all these changes.
Major
Cases only different
Correct.
for
That's
Assam.
right. That's right. It's different because that's the only state, as you would note, that the aspect of detection and deportation of illegal migrants had been a bone of contention since the 70s and the 80s.
Right.
So
It's been a long
and
time.
it's been a long time, and this is the only state where formally there has been an NRC exercise. What is an NRC? Of course, there is a lot of criticism about NRC also, but
Mhm.
to me, it appears to be a housekeeping exercise. And it's like a country who's saying that I wish to have a register of persons who are my citizens. I don't think it's like saying that I am the employer of my office, I must have a register of my employees.
Right. Right. Right.
So it's a plain housekeeping exercise. If and of course, if it is done scrupulously, of course, you would have seen the papers and you would have read
Mhm.
otherwise also on media platforms, etc., that the NRC will be a device to discriminate, or it will be used as a weapon to exclude persons, etc. So that, see, yes, if somebody does something unscrupulously, then anything can be weaponized or it can be a device. But
Mhm.
I think if it is done scrupulously, I see no that it is something that a country should have. And we are not the first country who's actually trying to carry out or carrying out such housekeeping exercises to differentiate or to identify the citizens from the non-citizens. But yes, in Assam, why different? Because this aspect is been there since the 80s. There are judgments now to say you carry it out, and it is the first state which has actually carried it out, which is why it is like there are other issues also apart from the regular CAA discussions. So yes, Assam is a this
Special
aspect
case,
is
we
also
can
in the
say.
Supreme Court special case, but this is also separately, like I said, in the CAA there are several petitions. There are in fact more than 100 petitions from what I've been informed that are pending. So even the aspect of the Assam NRC and the criticism and the objections to the CAA vis-a-vis the Assam situation is also is under challenge before the Supreme Court. So once the adjudication comes, they will decide this also.
Okay, okay. So, Amish, I must say that you have taken this a really great, difficult topic very easily, very enlighteningly, and enlightenment it is for us. And I would like to suggest all the viewers, whosoever is interested, whosoever is affected, or for general knowledge, you must go through this book. Go slow and study. If you have any questions, you can obviously connect with Amish. I am sure if, from his busy schedule, he will take out some time as and when possible for
No, no,
answering the queries also. And
absolutely.
very briefly, very detailedly, very in a very simple language, I must say you have explained the topic. So your talk and your brief about the book will surely help our viewers to connect with the book of also. And let's just
Thank
last
you.
but not the least on the closing
Please,
note,
please.
we would like
Yes.
to know anything, any new book you are working upon.
No, no, I am in fact, that's now this is where I am actually in a dilemma whether to continue to identify further areas in which there is little literature, or to go back to writing on areas in which I practice. So I am
Okay, okay.
presently I'm finishing the second edition of the first book, The Law of Sexual Harassment, that you in fact introduced also,
Okay, so you are
because
coming up with the second edition of the first
yes,
book. Okay, part two.
it
Okay,
should
okay.
part the second edition, because it's been time that there has been a lot of changes and there have been lots of
Changes.
judgments now that have come in the
Acha.
subject. So I think it really requires an overhaul. So that is in the works. I hope it is released soon. But on the first book, I think on the third book, sorry, I think I will. There is still some working to be done to ultimately decide as to what subject or area I should be picking up.
We will be looking forward for you to finish the book and yet have you another time on the same platform
Certainly,
to
thank you,
discuss
thank
with
you.
your third book.
Will be more than glad to come.
It was nice,
Right.
very nice connecting with you, Amish, and
Thank you.
thanks
Thank you
from the
so much
bottom
for
of my
having me.
heart
Thank you so much,
from
Garima.
for
Thank you.
coming here.
Thanking you for having me on the show.
We are. It's our pleasure to you for you being here. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Amish.
Thank you so much. Thank you.